Hi, welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney, and let me warn all parents out there, if you have kids in the car, young kids in the car, we're talking a very grown-up, heavy topic today about mental health and suicide. So you might want to just put on, Teletubbies or Barney or I don't know. I don't have young kids anymore. So my guest today is Debby Waldman. Debby Waldman is an author. She is also a fantastic writer. You can find her at nbcnews.com/think. A lot of great information out there. And today we're going to talk about inside her world of the title of one of the articles that I just happened to just find on the internet and really wanted Debby on this podcast to talk about this. And the title of the article she wrote, again for NBCnews.com, think, is Why Talking About Suicide with My Son Was So Important, Even Though It Was Difficult. Okay? Again, heavy topic. A few things I learned about talking with Debby, especially if you ever have your young adults, your kids, in a situation where they do have to be hospitalized. Something I learned from Debby is ask questions. Ask questions within that hospital organization. Make sure you're talking to the right people. Make sure they're responding back to you, because that was something she learned, that people weren't responding back. People weren't talking to her. I put this in my first book, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads, and it really resonated when I heard it from somebody else in a different context. Debby mentioned, tell your family each and every day you love them. You don't know. But on an upswing, I learned I have to up my grilled cheese game. The reason why I bring that up is before we started recording, Debby had to grab a quick lunch, a quick bite. And as we were talking, as we were just, getting to know each other, I like to equate it to tennis and just having a little volley, before the game starts. She made a gourmet version of grilled cheese. And oh my gosh, if you've ever seen the movie, one of my favorite movies that Jon Favreau wrote, directed, produced, called Chef. Great movie. But in the movie, he makes this grilled cheese for his son, and it is just, I love that movie and just seeing food being made. So Debby, in honor of you, I will be upping my grilled cheese game going forward. So there we go. Now, Debby was open and honest, talking about, what her and her family went through with her son Noah. And the picture you see in the show notes, you'll see, is from the article of a canoe that he built with his friends. And I know nothing about woodworking. I know nothing about making anything, but you have to look at this picture. It is just fantastic. And all I can say is I think Noah's on the right path. The other thing is I put in of course, I have to have my dogs. I have to have pictures of dogs. So Debby's 3 dogs we talk about. Chip is the Labrador. Then there's Uno and Archer. Okay? So if you're ever a guest on this podcast, be ready. We're going to talk dogs. And we also talked a little bit of hockey. So check Debby out. All of the information of how to get a hold of her, read her books, and read her articles will be in the show notes. That's it. We're going to get into this. And again, I'm warning you, this is going to be an in-depth conversation about mental health and suicide. So as Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. Ready. Cool. Well, first of all, Debbie, thank you for coming on the Blending in the Family podcast. I've, for the past 20 minutes we've been talking. This has been great. So I've learned I have to up my game on grilled cheese.
Okay.
I'm excited about coming to your part of Canada next week. But the first thing I want to start off like if we were playing tennis, just starting off a little volleying.
Okay.
And the first question I have to ask out of the gate, you sent me some beautiful pictures um, that I'm going to use for the show notes. But the one thing you didn't put in the bio information are the name of your dogs.
Oh, did you say the name of the dog? Is that what you asked?
Your
Did you say
dogs, the
the
dogs
dog?
that you sent pictures
Ah,
of.
okay. So my dog is the one that I'm doing the high five with. That's Chip.
Okay.
She's a chocolate lab, 3/4 lab, one
Oh,
quarter poodle. So we call her my friend calls her a labradoo, and so it's
Labrador.
a labradoo. So that's my dog, and the light colored dog with the big head belongs to my daughter and her boyfriend, and his name is Uno, and he is he's a rescue dog, and he only has one eye. He lost his eye as a puppy. He was
Aw.
attacked. He's the sweetest dog ever. He's just such a big, sweet, gentle dog. And then the other dog, the little black lab, belongs to my son's girlfriend, and his name is Archer. So yeah. Now when the kids come over, we have three dogs at the house, which is kind of fun because the dogs all get along pretty well. So
Oh,
that's
that's
very nice.
good. That
Yeah.
is good. Yeah. Speaking of dogs, so uh, I took uh, our dog Otis to the dog park, and here in Colorado, starting later this afternoon, we're supposed to get rain, and then it's going to turn into snow. So he unfortunately won't be able to go to the dog park tomorrow because it'll be all wet and muddy. So Otis had a bath today, and so I'm
Otis.
excited for him because he's now super clean and he smells way better.
Wow.
Is Uno named after the pizzeria from Chicago?
No, I think Uno is named because he only has one eye. He had
Ah,
another
okay.
name. I forgot what his. He had some other bizarre name, but then whoever fostered him, I think they called him Uno, and I can't remember it was a weird name. And Elizabeth, my daughter, and her boyfriend Matt just decided Uno worked. So
Uno, it does work. It does work. I'm just a huge dog lover. I
yeah.
just love dogs. I'm sorry, cats, not so
You
much.
know what? When I was a kid, I loved cats. Especially kittens. I love little to cuddle kittens, but I had really bad allergies, and I wasn't supposed to go near cats. I would break out in hives, and whenever I was near a cat, my mother could tell because I break out in hives, and she would say, "Were you near a cat?" So after a while, I decided I didn't like cats because it was the only way I could avoid being near them and getting into trouble. And I've sort of never outgrown that. So even though I want to love cats, I think I was so conditioned to not go near them because they made me sick. So I'm definitely more of a
Was
dog
your
person.
was your mom Harvey Firestein?
No, no. My mother loved animals. She grew up on a farm. Like she loved animals, but she did not like seeing me because I'd get all wheezy and sick. So I mean, it was she was right. I wasn't supposed to be near cats. So
No, you were meant to be near dogs,
exactly.
especially Chip, Uno, and Archer.
Yes, that's my dog family. That's our pack. That's the pack. Yeah,
The
and I,
pack,
I love
yes.
them. Yeah.
So the way I reached out to you, Debbie, and thank you for accepting my LinkedIn invitation. This is one of the things I love about doing this podcast is the ability to find um, people on LinkedIn after I read an article. And if I read an article and it just draws me, I'm like, I've got to let them know that their article impacted me. And a lot of the guests that have come on this podcast is because of that. And I think that there are times where, we'll read an article and it's like, that was really good. And then we just leave it. And as a, I don't want to say I'm the same caliber as you, Debbie. I mean, my third book will be coming out one day,
Okay.
hopefully soon. Um, but as a fellow writer, fellow author, I feel that there are times where you put out some great content and you hope somebody responds. It's like this podcast. I hope somebody responds after hearing what, not only what you have to say, but talking about your story. So again, thank you so much for, we had some great dialogue on LinkedIn. The piece, why talking about suicide with my son was so important, even though it was difficult, is the article that I read, and I was sitting there going, I don't want to say it in a negative way that I felt like a bad parent. I felt like a bad dad because I haven't had this conversation.
Uh,
And I still haven't had this conversation because I wanted to wait until speaking with you because I really am. And there are other parents. I know there's going to be other parents out there who have. So let me say it this way. So for somebody like myself who's gone through years of battling depression, years of going through suicide, but having that experience and then talking to our kids about it is so important. In the article there was talk about there was the senator.
oh yeah,
Uh,
actually, the Congressman Jamie Raskin, whose son
yes,
Tommy died by suicide uh, on New Year's Eve of, so it would have been 2020, New Year's Eve 20. So December 31st, 2020, he took his life. And
because he talked about in the article about you know uh, yeah, we parents have to have those talks about
yeah,
sex, but talking about mental illness,
yeah.
that is something huge.
So it's interesting when you were saying you haven't had that talk with your son yet. I didn't have that talk with my son about why, and the talk that I had with him was why I didn't want him to take his life. And in the article, I explained that I only felt free and comfortable, or as comfortable as one can feel having that kind of a conversation with my son, was when I'd given up all hope. I had given up all hope that he was gonna live. I was pretty sure he was gonna kill himself because he'd been in a psychiatric hospital for 6 weeks, during which time they'd thrown like every drug imaginable at him. I remember my brother-in-law, who's an emergency doctor in Calgary, which is a few hours away from here, saw him and said, he's a, and he used an expletive as an adjective, zombie. Like, what are they giving him? And so they'd given him so many medications, and they gave him 6 rounds of electroshock therapy. That point was, if 6 weeks in a hospital and all that quote unquote treatment hadn't helped him, it was completely hopeless. He wasn't going to survive. And so that was when I finally thought, if I don't tell him how I feel and how I would feel if he died, I will never forgive myself, because I'm pretty sure he's going to kill himself. And I said, I have to tell you something. And I said, I don't know, you might not want to hear this, but if I don't say this, I'm never going to forgive myself. I said, I think I said, what I said was, if you go ahead and succeed in taking your life and I don't say this to you, I will never forgive myself. And then I told him, I said, I love you, which he did not like hearing at that point. I think because he hated himself so much, he didn't want to hear that anybody else loved him. And he said, you don't have to say that. And I said, no, I do, because I my dad had taken his life when I was 13, and I had no idea that that was coming. And the last morning that I saw him, which of course I didn't know was the last morning that I saw him, he dropped me off at school, and I've wondered for 48 years, did I say I love you the last time that I saw him? So I thought, you're gonna hear this from me. I'm gonna tell you that I love you. Um so I said that, and then I said, you've been telling us for the last 6 weeks that your life is yours to do what you want with, but your life is a part of our life. And if you succeed in killing yourself, you're going to end, all your problems will be solved in a minute, and you are going to blow a world of hurt into our lives so big that we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to fill that hole, and we'll never succeed. And I'd been so scared to say that to him because I didn't want to make him feel worse than he did. I didn't want to put him on the defensive. I didn't want to make it into this big guilt trip like, you can't kill yourself because it'll hurt my feelings, even though it would have. I just wanted him to know really honestly that we were all interconnected and that his problems were seemed insurmountable, but he had these people who loved him and will do anything to help him, and we were here for him, and we would be here for him, and this is what you mean to us. And I wasn't sure how he was going to take it, but he put his arm around me and we just sat there for the longest time like that. And I just thought, okay, I've said it. I still don't know what's going to happen, but I said it, and that's all I can do, because we have no control over other people. We only have control over our own actions. But as I said, I only did that because I thought I had nothing, no other options left, and I was pretty sure that my words are going to fall on deaf ears. But I know people are really, it's a terrifying conversation to have because you don't know how to say it, you don't know how to approach it. I think it's a really great idea to take there's a course called QPR, which is a suicide prevention course, and they give you really great ideas for how to talk to somebody who's suicidal. Um, I took a mental health first aid course, and they also told us, they gave us sort of scripts, and those things are really helpful. But in the moment, it's hard to figure out. It's really hard to figure out what to say. Um, I should I should tell you, I talked last week. I'm trying to find these notes. Last week, I did a story for another story for NBC Think, and this one was inspired by the suicide of Katie Meyer, who is the Stanford University women's soccer team captain. Because I just thought, oh, when I heard that she had died, like my first thought was, oh my god, another one. And I just felt so bad for her family. And then I thought, I wonder if she was a perfectionist, because that's what I always think when I hear about a young, accomplished person taking their life. My first thought is always, was that person a perfectionist, and did it get to the, and sure enough, I think her family was kind of wondering the same thing. So anyway, I decided I wanted to do a story about it, and I I um I talked to this woman named Kate Fagan, who wrote a book called What Made Maddie Run, which, though, about another athlete. Yes, another. So that was an incredible book that I read about a year and a half after Noah. I guess about a year and a half ago, actually. So Noah had been out of the hospital for a while by then, and the book reads like a novel. It's about this young woman who is this top of her game. She was an outstanding high school soccer player, and she wanted to play college soccer, but she also wanted to go to an Ivy League school. And she was recruited to play soccer at all these different colleges, but she chose to go to Penn because she got into University of Pennsylvania, and they didn't want her to play soccer. They wanted her to run track. So she ran track. And she was a, everybody loved her. She was bubbly and beautiful and smart and athletic, and she had tons of friends, and she was a real leader. But when she got to college, it wasn't all that she thought it was going to be, and she worked herself into this terrible depression and took her life. And it was just an incredibly sad story. And I thought about her when I heard about Katie Meyer, and so I wanted to talk to the person who wrote the book, Kate Fagan. So I spoke with her, and then after I spoke with her, I called Madison's family. Madison Holleran's family started a foundation that promotes suicide prevention and provides help for crisis help for people in need. And I talked to her sister, to Madison's sister Carly, who runs the foundation, and she said something that was kind of what she said to me. I wanted to use it in the story, but they it sort of didn't fit in the story. But she said, I heard that a lot of people don't like to talk about suicide and suicide prevention because they're nervous that it will give others the idea about suicide. But we teach our kids about fire prevention, and it's not like we think they're going to go home and start fires. And I thought, wow, that's such a great analogy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I thought that's, we invest such power in the word suicide, and we have to, what we have to do, I think, at the very basic thing that we have to do is to teach our kids that suicide is not a solution to a problem. It's what they call it, a long-term solution to a short-term problem, because most problems in life are insurmountable, or are, excuse me, are surmountable. And if you can't surmount them, then you can find ways, most things you can find ways to live with. I'm not going to say everything, but the problem is young people don't have that perspective because they haven't been around for that long. All they've ever seen is, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they just assume life is always going to be this way. They can't see the long game that we can see, because we've seen these horrible problems, we've dealt with horrible problems, we've managed to find a way to live with them. They don't think there's a way to live with them. They think the only solution is to just kill themselves and then it all ends. They don't see the effect that it has on other people. And we need to be able to give our kids perspective.
I want to go back a bit, Debbie, and talk about your son Noah. And you were saying that he was on different meds and electrotherapy, and none of that worked. As he was going through all of that, what were your feelings about being a parent at that time? Because I'm sure you're feeling some guilt. Um, I look back on one of the last attempts, and my mom was there, and years later, it didn't really occur to me, what she had to go through. She had to, she wasn't kidding, but she had to hide the knives from me. So as a
Oh, we
parent,
did that too.
yeah.
We did that too. We did that too.
So how did you get through that as a parent, and what feelings, were you going through as what Noah was going through along the same time?
So, okay, you have to understand the context of all this. So, on February 15th of 2018, my beloved aunt died, my last aunt, the sister my mom was closest to. That was February 15th. On February 25th, my mother died. On March 11th, Noah decided he wanted to die and went into the psychiatric hospital. So I was trying to grieve for my aunt and my mother, and then all of a sudden my son decides he wants to die. So I had all kinds of, and it was also the anniversary of the time that my dad took his life, because that was March 7th, 1974. So all these things are mixed up in this horrible stew. And I remember the first night that Noah was in the psychiatric hospital, my husband and I went, and we got a little tour of the unit where he was going to be, the young adult unit. And I remember looking at my husband and saying, like, thinking to myself, I am not going to be that person who loses two of the most important men in her life to suicide. That's just completely unacceptable to me. And I said to him, I am not going to be the meat in the suicide sandwich, which is like maybe a horrible thing to think, but that's exactly, I was like, that's not going to be me. But I didn't know how to prevent that from happening. I had no idea. And I got really, really sick while Noah was in the hospital. So here's what happened when Noah was in the hospital. My stomach went crazy, and I was going to the bathroom like 15 times a day. It was horrible. I was really sick. It all came out in my gut. And my husband, who's a scientist, his way of dealing with it was to do all this research to find out what we could do, like what kind of treatments would help make Noah better. And my daughter's way of dealing with it was to sign the two of us up for suicide prevention courses and mental health first aid courses. So, and I said to my husband after it was all said and done, all I did was get sick. And he said, no, you made sure people visited Noah every day. And it was true. I made sure that either we went to visit him at the hospital every day, or his friends went to visit him at the hospital every day. I would advise anybody whose kid is in a hospital to get to know the people caring for your child. And if those people have no interest in talking to you, then find other caregivers, because unless you are the person causing your kid's problem, assuming that you're a parent who cares deeply about your child and wants them to succeed and be better, you should be a part of their care.
Definitely a team, definitely a team effort.
And you know that you're putting in the effort, and he understands that. And he said he also has this mantra now, which is this too shall pass. So when he's going through something really difficult, he knows that it's not going to be like that forever. And that's that perspective that kids really, really need. We all need it. But I think it's harder for young people because, like I said, they haven't been around for as long, so they haven't had as much of a chance to develop that perspective.
Well, I have some great news, Debbie. We're going to talk hockey.
Okay, because this is
No,
too heavy? Is that why?
no, because what you're
Okay.
talking about is, this too shall pass. Well, when I was first coaching my son, he was a goalie. Well, he still is. And, after, I don't know, I want to say he was probably 8 years old at the time, he'd come over to the bench in between periods in tears. And I'd be like, "Are you okay? Did you get hurt?" And he would sit there and cry because he let in a goal. And I'm like, "Dude, we got two more periods to go." And I would remind him, later on in life as he got older, I said, you know, at the end of the day, nobody's going to die if you let in a
Yeah.
goal or two or four or whatever. And I think you really nailed it, is that the young kids just don't have that experience, especially now with, you've got all the social media, and you see these influencers, and they're living large, and it doesn't help with the mental health aspect, that
No.
as a young adult they're looking at this, what they think is super successful, you know rock star, media person, what have you, and they think that they have to get to that level,
Yeah.
but they don't.
And not only that, but they think that the person at that level is happy and perfect all the time, and they're not.
Right.
So that's the other thing. It just sets up, and we know they're not perfect all the time because we've been around long enough to know that a lot of that is just shiny polish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um and that everybody has ups and downs. And and the other thing, but I think we also do our kids a disservice when we don't let them see that we also have failures in life. Like I've tried to show that to my kids, and tell them like all the times that I've messed up or haven't done as well as I wanted, and yet I've somehow I'm still alive and functioning and basically a happy person, right? So I try not to put too much pressure on myself. Although Noah being in the hospital helped me to realize that I did have that tendency, that I do have that tendency to put too much pressure on myself. And so then you get that guilt of like, how much of this was my fault, right? So
And how did you get through that guilt?
we went, we had family therapy. Like, I, seriously, like, it, so it was, Noah was in the hospital, and the people at home were my husband, myself, and our daughter, who was 22 at the time. And we were all, as I said earlier, we were all dealing with his hospitalization in our own little ways. And we were all basically in our own little silos of anger and grief and terror and trauma. And we were not always very nice to each other. And I kept saying, we have to
Mm.
be nice to each other. We have to be kinder to each other. And it wasn't working. Like everybody would have these moments where we would be horrible to each other. And finally I said, we have to go for therapy because this we have to be able to talk to each other. And my husband and I have gone for therapy on and off since before our marriage, just because I we got married after having a long distance relationship for 4 years. We hadn't ever lived in the same city for very long. So before we got married, we went for some premarital counseling, which was really helpful. And throughout our marriage, whenever we've had problems, we've gone to the same person because we don't have to catch her up on everything because she already knows us. So I called and made an appointment for the three of us to go and see her, for my daughter, my husband, and I. And it was really, really helpful because we all had a chance to talk, and she could sort of weigh in and help us. And then at the end of that first session, she said, "So are you guys okay now? Can you just go home and talk to each other?" And we all yelled at her in the same moment, "No!" and, and we kept going. We kept going, like, "No, no, we have to come back." So we basically went like every week while Noah was in the hospital because we needed that. We needed a mediator. We need somebody who could help us to be nice to each other because we weren't being nice enough to each other. Something like this takes a huge toll on a family, and it's really easy for everybody to blame everybody. And it's no one person's fault. It just isn't. These things happen. So it's like it's a stew of genetics and circumstance that landed Noah in the hospital.
I see sitcom for you. You're a great writer,
Oh,
Debbie. I think you can do, I could see this as a sitcom,
oh,
it's
oh, talk it up, talk it up. Okay.
I'm just, you've got,
God.
a family going through some trials and tribulations. They take the step to go to, family counseling, and I'm just saying the dynamics. I think you've got a connection with NBC, so I
Yeah.
sell it to them. Yeah.
No, I'm telling you should have seen the look on her face though when we all yelled at her. She was so taken aback. She was like, I think she thought, I've done my job. Now they can go home and tell everything will be fine. I'm like, no, no, it won't. So yeah. Right.
So let's, and I know we talked about this briefly. All right, I want to have this. I want to have this conversation. I want to sit down with my son, and probably, as I think about it, I probably should have this conversation with my two bonus daughters as well, because, uh, or I don't know, but I think it's still something that should be, talked about. You know,
Yep.
just like uh, uh, Representative Raskin. When he talks about, you know having the talk about, sex, we should be having the talk about, again, about suicide and mental health. So what have you learned in your experience going with Noah, and actually your daughter and your husband, going through all of this? What advice or tips can you give, not only to myself, but other parents out there that have gone through their own mental health struggles? What can you say to them about having a one-on-one conversation?
I think I think that if I were gonna have a conversation with a kid now about suicide and why it's never a good idea. Now, mind you, I'm thinking about it right now from my own perspective as a parent. I would start out by watching that news clip from the Today Show where the interviewer also broke down crying talking to Katie Meyer's parents, where her mother talked about how broken she said, we're so broken. This is every parent's worst nightmare. I really think at some point I would show a kid that video and say, look, your parents, you might not think your parents love you all the time, but to a parent you're their whole world. And and suicide might seem like the best solution because it means that all your problems are going to end right away, but you're going to create all kinds of problems for so many people, not just for your family but for your friends and your teachers and everybody who cares about you. And maybe you can't see that now, but what you need to understand is that everyone has crappy things happen to them and everyone struggles and everyone fails. You're not the only one, and we're here to help you through it. Just need to be honest with us and tell us, and we're here for you. But please don't let this be your solution, because it's not a good solution. It's never a good solution. And look, here's this mom and dad falling apart on national TV because they can't believe that their world has ended. And then you got to hope that the message gets through. And there's other ways too. Like I remember in the suicide prevention course that we took, like there's different scripts that you can use, but those scripts I didn't feel comfortable with them. They didn't work for me. And obviously, the method that I took worked for it had the desired effect, which is, it's 4 years later and my son is alive and well and has a mantra to help him when he's feeling lost, and he knows to ask for help. He knows that he's got a support system that's not just mom, dad, and sister, but he's got lots of friends, and he's got a doctor, and he's had a psychologist. And so that that saying, it takes a village, is true. It doesn't have to just be you, one person, who's going to help that depressed and suicidal kid. It's a whole team of people. When I think about Noah and his depression, when he was in the lowest depths of it, I picture him on a hanging off a cliff by his fingernails, and on the top of the cliff there's this whole big group of people, like our immediate family, our extended family, his friends, and the medical professionals, and we're all on top of this cliff pulling him up by his fingernails, and somehow we managed to pull him over, and now he's standing. So that's the image that I have in my head. But it takes a lot of people, and you have to be willing to listen, and you also have to be able to be quiet, because sometimes they don't want to talk, they just want to sit.
It's okay to be in silence.
Yeah, which, as you can tell from the amount that I've been talking, is not necessarily something that comes easily or naturally to me.
Well, it's the New Yorker in you, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yep. I think so.
We'll leave it at that. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Okay.
So let me ask you this, Debbie. What's your relationship with your husband like?
Oh, it's great. I love my husband. We get along really well. We're very companionable and compatible. We give each other the space that we need, but we're there for each other, very supportive of each other, and very honest with each other. Like, we can tell each other when something's bugging each other, and we can yell at each other, and then we calm down and speak calmly to each other. And like, I'm grateful that I have somebody, that I'm married to somebody like that, who I get along with really well, and, as I said, can be honest with. And he loves his kids, and we're on
And the
the same
dogs?
page about supporting them. And that's funny. the dog, the dog, the dog loves him, and he definitely loves the dog. But the dog, oh my goodness, the dog will sit and whine at him, to, like, after every night after dinner, she whines at him until he takes her for a walk. And actually, he could still be eating dinner, and she'll be sitting there whining at him. And I said to him yesterday, like, I usually take her for a walk at 8:30 in the morning. Yesterday, I didn't get around to take her for a walk till 3 in the afternoon. She did not whine at me once, but like him, he's 10 minutes late taking her for a walk, and she whines at him. So I don't know. They have a much different relationship than I do with her, with the dog. So yeah, it's really weird. She never does that to me, but boy, she talks to him.
Dog, yeah. I mean, dogs are they're great at. I think they're better at understanding people than people are understanding people.
Oh yeah. Oh, the one thing about her, if you're crying, she just comes right to you. And she's not the most affectionate dog. She's not a very affectionate dog, but boy, if you're crying, she's right there. She wants to know what's wrong. And yeah, she's anxious. She's anxious.
Well, there was a new study out talking about how dogs go through grieving after a loss of another animal within the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I believe it. I totally believe that.
How is Noah today?
Oh, um, he's good. He's good. He's just started a new job. He graduated during the pandemic, and he had a job before he graduated, and then he was supposed to start it like 3 weeks after graduation, and then the pandemic happened and the job was pushed forward, and then the job was canceled, and he didn't have a job at all. But then he found a job within like a couple weeks. So he worked for until January as a at a project management firm for engineering, and he just got sort of his dream job working at a uh, I think it's mostly a civil engineering firm, which is what he does is civil engineering, doing roads, like building and yeah, build designing and building roads, which is that's sort of one of his great interests is roads and airports. He's a big infrastructure kind of guy. So this is his first job um, doing that, and he started in the beginning of March. He started last on March 7th, and on March 15th, he went on his first road trip where they're actually looking at roads. And he was telling us that yesterday they they had to count cracks in roads. Which doesn't sound like the most interesting thing to me, but it's like I know that it's really exciting for him. It's like, wow, I get to
Right,
count.
right. With that personality,
Well,
yes.
and I mean, yeah, it's like fixing the roads, and so yeah. But he's also um when the pandemic happened and he didn't have a job, um we were worried because he was going to have. I mean, at first he was going to have, instead of 3 weeks off, he had 6 weeks off with nothing to do, and we got a little worried because he's somebody who doesn't like to be idle. So I said to him, hey, you've been wanting to build a canoe for a couple of years. Maybe you should build the canoe now. This was in March of 2020, and he said, well, I need tools. I don't have any tools. And I said, well, we haven't bought you a graduation present, so we'll buy you tools for a graduation present. So we bought him like a router and a table saw, I think. And he got this crew of his friends together, and he had a how to make a canoe book that he'd had for a couple of years, and they bought cedar strips, and they they sawed them and routed them, and they made um they made the molds for the canoe, and they built a canoe in our garage over the course of a couple of months, he and his friends. And every day he had different people coming over to help him, and it was incredible. He built this beautiful cedar strip canoe, and and then they also made paddles, and he used different kinds of wood for the paddles, and he laminated them, and they were beautiful. And I said, wow, that looks kind of like the cutting board that my cousin made for dad and I for a wedding present. Do you think you could teach me how to do that? Maybe I could make some cutting boards. And we've been making cutting boards together for the last couple of years. So, and I wrote about that for the New York Times, and they they ran pictures of some of the cutting boards, and people started writing to me like, "Can I buy a cutting board?" And so I wound up selling all these cutting boards, and then I donated the money to the Edmonton Mental Health Foundation because I was like, "Well, that's a." I mean, I hadn't made them to sell them, but it was so much fun making them. I had tons of cutting boards that I didn't need, and so that's been kind of fun. And he and his friend, who is my daughter's boyfriend, they're all living together in a house, and they just built the most amazing looking um, coat rack. I don't even think I can. It's hard to describe, but the pegs are pressed into this piece of wood, but then when you need a peg, you just sort of pull the peg down. So when it's not being used, it's just like
Oh,
a a wall decoration, and then when it is being used, you just pull the pegs down and hang your coats on it. And they built this thing, and it's incredible. Like, so yeah, that's kind of fun. So he's got.
so the canoe picture is what you used on the
Yeah,
NBC.
his uncle took that picture of him in the canoe in the backyard of his house in the fall. Yeah,
Yeah,
he built that canoe.
that
And
is
yeah,
beautiful. I
yeah.
mean, I mean,
Well,
I
he and his
can't draw a
friend.
straight
Yeah.
line. I mean, but looking at that, the woodwork
Oh, it's
and
incredible. And he
oh
made
my,
this.
it is.
He learned how to cane like a chair seat, so he caned the seats in the canoe too. Like he ordered the whatever stuff to cane this. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was a long. It went really quickly at first, and then he started working, so he didn't have as much time to work on it. So from like April to June, they built the canoe, and then from June to October, they finished it, and that was we didn't have a garage for many months. I will tell you. There's still all sorts of weird things on the floor of the garage. Um, all kinds of strange solventy things that they used for the canoe. But anyway,
Uh, dumb question,
no
Debbie.
dumb
Have
questions. No such thing as a dumb question.
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
has Noah and his friends taken it out
Oh yeah, oh
on the
yeah. Oh,
water?
lots of
I just
times.
wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
Oh yeah, lots of times. Yeah, but we actually launched it, believe it or not, on November 1st, 2020 is when we launched in November. It was nice enough in November that you could take the canoe out. So yeah, and he's taken it like lots of times. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's not just,
No, it is a
for
seaworthy
show.
vehicle. It's a seaworthy vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Are you worried, because you used the word Noah's dream job, are you worried that if something happens to his dream job, that he might take a step
You
back?
know, maybe I shouldn't have said dream job, but no, he even said that. He even said it's like kind of like that was the job that when he was writing, I think when he was writing his job letter applications. Yeah, I do. I worry. I'm like, uh-oh, what if he gets bored with his job and decides he doesn't like it? But you know what? He'll get through it. He'll be okay. I would hope anyway. Because when he was not as happy at his first job, we spent a lot of time talking about it and gave him lots of strategies for how he could either make it work or start looking for a new job. And he did. He started looking for a new job, and um and here he is. He got the kind of job that he really wanted. Because I think we realized he's not happy being inside in the summer. He's a kid who really he loves the outdoors. He likes to be busy, and civil engineering has lots of opportunities to be outside. But he had a job, his first job, where he wasn't really outside. It was project management, so it wasn't actually doing the hands-on stuff. And I said to him last summer when he was not happy being inside, you need a job where you're outside. You should be looking for a job where you can spend some time inside and some time outside. And when he found this job, it actually said, this is a job for somebody who likes variety in their work. And I was like, that's you. Where you have to be comfortable doing field work and office work. And I was like, yeah, Noah, that's what you want. And that's exactly what he wants. So he had his first week, he was in an office the whole time. And now he's outside, counting cracks in the road. But that's what civil engineer. And then he'll get to sort of, I guess, help figure out how to make the road better. So there's a lot of variety. And he's somebody who likes variety. So yeah. And he
Well,
knows.
Debbie,
Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
keep going,
I
keep
was just
going.
going to
No,
say,
go on, go on.
as I said, I have confidence that he knows how to ask for help, and that's something else that's really important. Is
Hmm.
that our kids have to be unafraid to ask for help. They have to know that we're here to help them, and if we can't help them, we'll help find somebody who can. But they shouldn't be afraid to ask for help because everybody needs help.
I'm happy you bring that up just because I think I'm going to have another conversation with my son about that because one of his classes, I don't want to say struggling. I mean, he's doing okay in it, but I still feel that even though I've had, and I don't want to come down on him, I want him to be able to use his network to say, hey, I need help in this class. And so, uh, it's hard as a parent because if you reach out to your kids, their typical answer is yes, I know.
Yeah, yeah,
But do you that's where I just want to say, you do but you don't because you're not asking.
yeah. Sometimes they don't know how to. I think I'd like to think that I've showed my kids how to ask for help. I'm pretty good at asking for help. I have no qualms about it.
I think it's a hard skill
Yeah.
because especially we men, not to generalize, but we men, we
You don't ask for
back in the
directions.
day, we exactly. Thank you. You knew where I was going, Debbie, and you're right. It's like we'll figure it out,
Yeah.
even if we have to circumvent the globe. We'll get
Yep.
there. We might be late, but we'll eventually get there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There you go.
Well, Debbie, this has been a lot of fun. I hope it was as much fun with you. But before we get to the last question,
Oh,
please let the audience know how they can read a lot of your great books and maybe they want to reach out to you.
okay. So I have a website. It's debbywaldman.com. It's DEBBYWALDMAN.com, which I'm about to redesign because I said it's like a double wide trailer from the 1970s. Like it definitely needs to be renovated. So it's on my that is on my to-do list for the week, talking to a web designer. So you can reach me there. I think the email address is on there. I believe it's debbie@debbywaldman.com, so you can reach me that way, or at debbyw4@gmail.com. Goes to the same place. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but Instagram is more for like pictures of the dog and food, and Twitter is more for I tend to post my articles more on Twitter, and the Twitter handle is Debbie JW1122, and
That sounds made up,
it's
Debbie.
totally made up, but it's really true. Debbie JW1122, because there were a million Debbie JWs, so I had to come up with some numbers after it. And Debo JW60, it's DEBOJW60 is the Instagram, where you can see pictures of the dog and my baking and landscapes. I bake a lot, and then I take pictures of the food. So there you go.
I have to I have to go do my workout and then I'm gonna eat.
A grilled
But
cheese sandwich.
no, because I already had bread this morning.
Oh,
But
oh, I'm
oh
impressed. Okay.
yeah, I've got a well. We have a wedding this year, so I'm trying to get down to my
Your
you know
fighting weight.
my I don't want to say fighting because I'm not a fighter. I'm a been beaten upper, I guess. I don't know. I'm get down to my a better dad bod.
A
How's
better
that?
dad
I'll
bod.
bring I'll bring that phrase back.
Okay.
Dad bod.
Sounds good. Sounds good. That sounds good.
I will. So Debbie, last question. What are you looking forward to tomorrow? What are you looking forward to
Oh, what am
tomorrow?
I looking forward to tomorrow? Actually, I'm even looking forward to stuff today. Today I'm looking forward to going to see my friend's new kitchen that was just remodeled. And tomorrow I'm looking forward to talking to a friend who I haven't talked to in years, and we just sort of reunited. So I'm pretty excited about talking to her. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And also, there's a hockey game, so maybe the Oilers will win. Go Oilers! So yeah, also looking forward to the hockey game.
I'll let that slide.
Oh, okay.
Being a Blackhawks fan, but it's still you're still a hockey fan, so I love it.
Yeah, well, in the Blackhawks, they've had their they've had their Stanley Cup in the last you know 15 years, so you can just get in line now behind the Oilers.
Oh come on, the Oilers had their
It was
dynasty.
years ago. It was years ago. It was before I moved here. Like I feel like I moved here just in time for the drought. It was seriously, it's really, yeah, kind of sad. Anyway,
Well, it's like being a Chicago fan. You had those highs, and then now we have lows.
well, this has been my reality since I moved here. So, but you know what? Every year, it's like being a gardener, right? Every year,
Hmm.
hope springs eternal. So, and then every year your plants die, and then you start again. So there you go. It was really nice talking to you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.